Good afternoon and welcome to LiveWire on Access Sacramento. I'm Greg Popejoy, sitting in for Ray Tatter, who can't be with us today through unforeseen circumstances, and we hope he's back next week because we miss him terribly. Thank you for coming today. We have some great guests today. We have Douglas Shaw, all right, and Corliss Lee from the Locke Foundation talking about the wonderful little town of Locke and a celebration that they've got coming up. And if you don't know about Locke or you've never been there, prepare to be delighted on that. And in our first segment today, we're going to be talking about Stories on Stage, which is an institution of Sacramento that's been around for many years. We're going to find out how many years, some of the history of it. We have Dorothy Rice and Gay Cooper and Carol Marks. Dorothy Rice is the newly minted co-manager of Stories on Stage. She'll be filling us in on all the details, and then Gay Cooper and Carol Marks will be doing selected readings from their upcoming performance, which is like only 2 days away, and there are only a few tickets left. So we'll be giving you all the information you need to go to Stories on Stage on Friday if you can. I know I'm going to be there, and I'm looking forward to it. So with that, stick around, and I'll see you in just a minute. Okay, hi there. We are ready to rock and roll here on Stories on Stage, which as I've heard about it, and as a longtime Sacramentan and a big Sacramento booster, I have to admit I have not been. I have tickets for Friday night. I'm looking forward to it. I've heard over the years, and I don't know why, I try to go everywhere and do everything, but I've somehow missed this experience. And I'm really looking forward to it. So we're going to hear more about it today. We have Dorothy Rice with us, who, as I said in the opening there, is the co-manager now at Stories on Stage. And maybe you could tell us how you came to be the co-manager. Like, you know, how did you get into that slot?
Well, let me first provide a little bit of history about Stories on Stage Sacramento.
I was going to go there next, but whatever you want to do.
You mentioned not having been.
Yeah.
And really, I don't think it's inaccurate to say that it's Sacramento's premier literary program. Right. The series celebrated its 10th season last year. 10 years. Under the leadership of Sue Statz, who has managed it herself for 6 years. Prior to that, it was Valerie Fioravanti who established it 10 years ago, so 2009. Because she wanted to bring more artists, authors to Sacramento, and came up with the concept of what they called electrifying stories, crackling theater. So bringing the authors to Sacramento and pairing them with actors, performers, readers to perform their work. So while the authors attend the performances, they're not reading their work, so it is a performance. So that was what was different about Stories on Stage. And last season, Sue Statz had been doing it a long, long time, and I think started looking around for someone who might take over. And Shelley Blanton Stroud, who is my partner, I think, accepted the baton. But as I recall, said, I'll do it if I can have a partner. It's kind of a big job, frankly. I don't know how Sue managed for 6 years. So Shelley Blanton Stroud and I agreed to take it on for 2020. So we began planning the season last fall after the 2019 season closed. And we now have a full lineup. All of 2020 is scheduled. We have a new website. We have a new logo. We filed for nonprofit status and are now a nonprofit.
That's good.
We're applying for grants and funding for the program and making a number of changes, but I'll let you jump in.
So you say artists and authors, but is it just authors, or sometimes you do have artists in there?
No, it's a literary series.
Yeah.
One way in which it changed is that the refrain on the website and all the materials used to be electrifying stories, crackling theater, and the emphasis was on fiction.
I'm sort of surprised that the authors, at least some of them, don't want to read their own works. I mean, essentially it's dramatic readings unless it's a comedic story, which I guess, would,
Yeah, I think mine's pretty funny.
Yeah,
mine will
right,
be read
right,
Friday
right.
night. But no, actually, as an author, and my experience from talking to other authors is they love it. It's a chance to hear their own work interpreted by someone else. It's also very restful. Usually,
right.
when you're an author and you're going to an event, you're on stage the whole time.
Right, that's right.
And so they get to do the fun part of signing books, selling books, meeting members of the audience, hearing a talented performer do their work, which may be something new. For some authors, it's the first time
Right.
they hear someone else read their work. So we've never had that question that I know of come up in 10 years. And of course, they need not accept. We ask authors if they will participate. And so far, despite the fact that we're not able to pay them very much at all, we've been thrilled with the wonderful authors that have come to Sacramento.
Right.
And our upcoming show, Friday night, is no exception with Pam Houston. I mean, we're just thrilled. It is the first time she has graced the Stories on Stage program.
Right.
And we're just so excited to have her and looking
Okay.
forward to a pretty full house and a reading of a very dramatic part of her new memoir, Deep Creek, Finding Hope in the High Country.
I know something about this. I'm looking forward to reading that as well.
Yeah, it's an excellent book. I
It's
have
one
read
of
the memoir.
One of the excerpts that's being read on Friday, is that right?
Correct,
Right.
correct.
And
So-
we have some pictures apparently from Stories on Stage that we'll get to look at here. There's one. So this is what we were just talking about, Pam Houston's Deep Creek, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And this is the one that Kara was reading, I think.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct. And Deep Creek is and Gray is the New Black is the second selection
Right.
being read from.
And that's
by Gay.
that's your book.
And it is my book, a memoir. I think probably lighter fare than Pam's.
That's Caro. Caro
And
Marks.
she'll be reading Pam's.
This is her first
selection.
time. Her first time, right?
First time on Stories on Stage, and
Yeah.
we're thrilled to have her.
Okay.
It's going to be amazing.
I know she's been
There's
working.
moi.
All right. Yeah, right. That's right. That's Dorothy Rice
Yeah.
and her new book.
And there's Gay, who will
Yep.
be reading an excerpt from Gray is the New Black.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And the two excerpts and there's Pam Houston, who, as many may know, is not only an acclaimed author, fiction, short stories, essay. There's Shelley Blanton Stroud, my partner,
Okay.
Yeah.
In the Stories on Stage
managing the program.
outfit. Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. And she's a teacher at Sacramento State and couldn't be here today.
All right. And in the English Lit department, probably? Or
English.
English, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
this is at the Clara Theater. Is this
Correct.
where Stories on Stage has always been? Or?
We've been there for a few years, but it has moved around. I believe it started in the Poetry Center way back
Oh,
when.
really? Yeah. at Ray's shop over there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
At times it has been at the Verge, the
Oh, yeah,
Art Gallery
sure.
Theater.
Yeah, I know Tim and Liv very well.
But now we are at the Clara.
There you go, yeah.
Indicates the address is 2420N, which is correct. That's where the front of the theater is. There is a parking lot, though, on the other side, which is 24th Street. So if you
Okay.
enter on 24th, there's a nice parking lot at the back.
Right.
I will also say doors open at 7. The performance is at 7:30. It's advisable to get there a little early.
I was going to say, yeah.
Because
yeah.
we're expecting a crowd, so
Yep.
in order to get a good seat
Right.
and make sure you have time to get a glass of wine if you want, have a
Okay.
free cookie.
So there are beverages and
There are beverages
snacks and,
for sale
Okay.
and cookies for eating.
Okay.
Free cookies.
Well, now I'm completely intrigued. You piqued my curiosity.
Good.
So we're going to have some sample readings right now.
Correct.
I
We
guess, is
thought
that
as a
right?
little teaser,
Okay.
it would be nice
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the audience to hear a few minutes of
Right.
Gray is the New Black from
All right.
Gay and a few minutes of Deep Creek
All right.
from Caro.
So Gay Cooper will give an excerpt of Dorothy Rice's new book. And this will be Friday night. So
Right. Do you want to say anything about it before I do?
Well, the subtitle maybe explains the whole thing. Gray is the New Black, a memoir of self-acceptance. So it's kind of, I took a year to figure out, how to be content and happy as an older woman in this country, which is fairly sexist and ageist and all of those things.
Right.
And it's sort of a humorous or tongue-in-cheek take on how it feels to deal with all the
So you had
isms.
some fun with it too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, oh, that sounds great.
Definitely.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear a little bit of that,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
I had become my mother, struggling with the simplest task. I used to consider people who are the age I am now old. Now that I was over 60, I didn't feel old, not on the inside. It wasn't age that made it hard to get up and down, that sapped my energy, that left me wheezing after climbing a flight of stairs. I'd done that to myself, one mini candy bar at a time. If I felt this way in my 60s, what condition would I be in 10 years from now? My 2 grandchildren would still be in their teens. Perhaps they would have cousins. Would I even be around to be a part of their lives? What was more important than that? What else was any of this about? On New Year's Eve, I'd been ready to throw in the towel. The headaches and bouts of depression, my depleted marriage, avoiding friends and family because I was ashamed of how I looked, helping other people with their writing instead of focusing on my own. None of that had been enough to trigger the desire for change. Yet out of the mouths of babes, Elliot had only said what he saw, what I hadn't wanted to face. I wanted to be a grandma he could count on, a grandma he could learn from and have fun with. Hell, I wanted to be able to sit on the ground without it being a major production. I needed to figure this out. I needed a plan, like every other year. But this time, I meant it. I was too old to keep backsliding, to put things off another year. It only got harder. 2017 would be the year to give it my all and not give up, to get healthy and make peace with my body and my marriage, to take pride in my accomplishments and to live life as if it mattered, as if I mattered, as if this might be my only chance. If not now, when?
Wow.
Cue applause.
Yeah, well done, well done. I think you're ready. Yeah. That's very interesting. I want to hear the rest of that. And so each performance is what, about 30 minutes or so on the stage?
This one may be a little less. I think
Yeah.
Carol's is just under 30.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on the selection. We
Right.
go for 20 to 30 minutes per author.
Right,
Yeah.
right. All right.
Yeah. And there is an intermission in between
Oh,
for more drinks and cookies
right. Okay. Drinks and cookies at the intermission.
and buying books.
Yeah. And donating if you want to.
Correct.
All right, so Carol,
Yeah.
you're going to read from Deep Creek.
Deep
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that too, because I've been sort of following your progress and familiarization with this piece, and it
Yeah.
sounds like a really good one too. So, why don't you give us a little sample of Deep
Yeah.
Creek?
I'll give a little bit of background for this excerpt. Ready? This author is a teacher who goes all around the world teaching writing workshops. And the excerpt I'm going to read, she has just come back from a week-long teaching gig in Provincetown to find that of her 5 sheep, 2 are missing. Also missing is her caretaker and her caretaker's girlfriend, Monroe and Daphne. So she's looked for the sheep, she's looked for the caretaker, and now she's about to extend her hunt for her caretaker by phone. To my surprise, Monroe answered his cell phone. They were staying a few days at the house of a friend in town, so they could drink all they wanted at the bar without having to drive the 12 miles to the ranch. Monroe didn't know what happened to the sheep, he said, but he thought he might have seen mountain lion tracks, and the coyotes had been especially loud lately, and he'd heard there'd been a bear nosing around Red Mountain Ranch, 5 miles up Ivy Creek, last week. When I asked why he hadn't thought to mention the missing sheep when I got home, and why he hadn't locked the sheep in their predator-proof pen late at night, as we always had, he had no answer. Remembering that a few weeks before, Monroe had drunk an entire bottle of wine with dinner, I asked him if he was in any kind of trouble. No trouble, he said, but he was sad about the loss of the sheep. "Those sheep were my friends," he said, but he seemed to have already forgotten which two of his friends were missing. So Greg and I and my student writers spent several hours that day combing the surrounding hills, calling for Samson and Phoebe. "Something's not right about this," Greg said, though I was usually the conspiracy theorist in the family. "He isn't surprised or worried enough that they're gone." On the phone, Monroe had said that he and Daphne would come out and help us look for Samson and Phoebe. But 2 more days went by and they didn't show. On the 3rd day, my friend and farrier, Dex Decker, showed up to trim the horses. And when I asked him whether he thought sheep in distress would move uphill or downhill, Dex said, "I don't think you're asking the right question." "So what's the right question?" I said. Dex thought for a minute and then said, "Well, shit. I guess it's going to be me who throws those kids under the bus." After I heard Dex's version, it was time to call Fred Hasselkuss. "Pam," he said when he picked up the phone, "I was wondering when I was going to hear from you. You missing a couple of sheep?" I said I was, and he said, "Well, you might want to check the freezer down at the Far Dog." The sheriff's version and Dex's version lined up remarkably well, given the way news travels in a small town.
All right. Yeah, nicely done, nicely done. We want to thank Dorothy Rice
Thank
and
you.
Gay Cooper and Carol Marks for joining us today. And Stories on Stage, this coming up. If we can see the mega graphic one more time, that's this Friday, the 31st at 7:30.
Doors open at 7.
And doors open at 7, parking on the 24th Street side,
Right.
basically. Okay, there's the address. Come on out, check it out. This promises to be a fun evening. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And we will be back right after this short break, or as Ray likes to say, the pause for the cause. All right, well, welcome back to LiveWire. We have a couple of other guests with us today. One is Mr. Douglas Shaw and Ms. Corliss Lee, who are here to talk about the wonderful town of Locke, which is just about, 20 miles, 25 miles south of Sacramento here on the river. It's an ancient town with a lot of history, and these folks are board members for the Locke Foundation, and they're going to tell us about some things that are coming up down the Locke that we're going to want to hear about. So Mr. Shaw and Ms. Lee, so tell us about Locke. What's the deal with Locke? What's the thing about the town? What is it that makes it Locke?
Locke is a big deal because we are the National Historical Landmark. We are on par with Golden Gate Bridge.
Wow.
And it's the only Chinese town that's built for the Chinese, by the Chinese, and only surviving rural Chinese town in the country.
Wow.
So there's a lot of history in Locke, in the Delta.
Right.
The Chinese, they came to here to build the railroad.
Yes.
And after the completion of the railroad, and the Chinese workers were recruited to do the levee
levees,
building.
right, the levee systems, yeah.
And after the levees was built, and they stay and work as farm laborers.
farm,
and,
sure.
Yeah. And yeah.
It's a storied history, I know. And you've got something coming up this weekend. It's February 1st, Free Museum Day, I think, in Sacramento. How does Locke tie into the Free Museum Day?
Well, I mean, the Locke Boarding House Museum, we are very proud to be part of the SAM, Sacramento Area Museum, and every year we participate the Free Museum Day, and we enjoy very good attendance.
We have it up on the screen right now. That's this Saturday at the Locke Boarding House Museum, and that's on Main Street. You can't miss it. One Main Street there, and sacmuseums.org is the website to go find out about this. So this will be open. In fact, I think I was there the day that museum was dedicated. That's been several years ago now, right? That's probably 8 or 9 years ago. Does that sound about right?
That's
maybe,
right,
Maybe 10. Yeah, it was wonderful. I remember the dragon in the street, and there were firecrackers, and and lots of people, and it was a wonderful occasion too, celebrating that feather in Locke's cap, if you will. So it's
Yeah.
and so it's still going strong after all that time. And then some history about the foundation. Corliss, you're a board member of the foundation for Locke. So how long has that been around, the foundation?
Since 2008, I believe.
Okay.
And we were put together because we needed a place where the historical significance of Locke could be saved.
Right.
And the foundation is there to educate and to preserve the history. And so, say for example, we have an oral history committee that takes care of meeting the people who've grown up there, who's lived there, whose lives were impacted by the Delta area. And those histories help us understand the psychological, sociological aspect. It's just not the statistics. 600 people lived in town, 1,000 to 2,000 people would come on their day off. This really gives it the meaning of what the town is all about.
We have some
this is the
pictures, I
Locke
think.
Foundation.
I think we even have some pictures
Yes.
of from Locke. And as I say, if you haven't been down there, it's just a wonderful gem that we have here in the Sacramento area and in the Sacramento Delta area. So there's a slide there that's what is that? Harper's Weekly? Is that from Harper's Weekly? Can you tell us about
Yeah.
that?
Well, this is one of the exhibits we held during the years because we are very thankful that the state park funded the renovation of the boarding house.
Right.
But the Locke Foundation has breathed life into the building. And so throughout the year, we always have different activities like author lecture. We have the Transcontinental Railroad exhibit.
Right.
And just now.
What is this picture here? There was a bunch of people back there in that big shot. I don't know
Oh,
what
it's
that's. There it is.
just to show that it's a very historic town.
Right.
And this is going back to the 1940s, and there's a lot of people, generations of Chinese living there.
Is that the boarding house there?
That's the boarding house, yes. In its present state.
And when was that built?
Well, it was
Remember?
built in the 1915, and it was a boarding house at the time, truly a boarding
Right.
house and used for the farm laborers.
Is this one of your?
That was the author lecture that we held.
Oh, right.
and
Okay.
you can see
As this was the
there.
dedication day, wasn't
This
it?
is the Chinese New Year celebration.
Oh.
Yep, and so the lion dance is the traditional performance for the Chinese New Year celebration.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
And this is for our May Spring Festival, and we invite organizations from the Asian American Pacific organizations to come to perform, and this is quite a performance.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And
What's this?
this is me docenting at the Dialogue, the Gambling Museum.
Oh, right.
So it's one of the attraction in the town because Locke we have a small street,
Right.
short street,
Yes.
but we have 4 museums.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Wonderful.
and
who are
this
these
is
folks?
our chairman who is giving out scholarship to the local high schools because we do every year give out scholarships to reach out to the local community.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. Mhm.
You're right. And there's another one. This is.
And this is this year's New Year's
Oh, right.
celebration.
That's coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's coming on the 15th, Saturday.
February 15th.
Yes.
Okay. And is that an all-day celebration?
That's from 12 to 4.
All right. And
Yes.
and there'll be food vendors and.
Yeah,
Yes,
there will be a lot of performances.
Right. Performances
And
again.
the restaurants all the restaurants are open.
Right.
And yeah, so it's gonna be fun.
Okay. And the lion dance.
Lion dance,
Gotta
yes,
have
you're
the
good.
lion dance. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds really That sounds really great. Sounds like a lot of fun. Parking is an issue down there, so if you want to go down for that, you want to get there early.
Well, I wouldn't worry about it because we will make sure there will be plenty of parking.
Oh yeah? Well, because you've got the field there.
We
If
can
it's
open
dry.
up the orchard. We open
Right.
up the orchard, and
Yeah.
there will be plenty
Yeah, as
of.
long as we haven't had like a big rain right before that could be a problem
Yeah.
out there, I know. And we have a mutual friend, Mark Miller, who just bought a building that's right across
Yes.
from Al's there, and we were talking
That was
about
my
that too.
parents' building.
That was your parents' building? Oh, is
Yes.
that right? So you know Mark then pretty well then, I would think from that. Yeah, yeah. He's going to take good care of it. I know he's doing it
Yes,
already.
he's wonderful.
And he has some musical events that
Events
happen there
there.
occasionally. Yeah, yeah. It seems to be pretty solid, and it's got that wonderful kitchen in the back. There's like these built-in walks.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So,
And Carlos has been like our living legend in the town.
Right.
Because I give credit to the Locke Foundation.
Right.
Because Locke Foundation is always in a position to outreach for the former residents or descendant of former residents.
right.
And Carlos has been living in the Bay Area all her adult life. I mean, she went out there for the college, and she never came back until
right.
one of our board member, he found her and dragged her back.
Dragged her back. Right.
And
Right.
now she is the most important board member for the
Absolutely.
foundation.
Absolutely. So you lived there? You actually lived
I
in Locke
did.
at one point? And
Yes.
until how old?
Until I was 18.
Oh, wow.
Then
so
I
you-
went to college.
Right, so that's quite a. So you knew
Yes.
Pineapple? Did you know
That was in
Pineapple?
Ileton.
That was I thought he was in
No, the
Locke.
Garden is in Locke.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Oh, I was talking about a person.
Oh, I didn't know
There was an old
Pineapple.
character there in Locke named Pineapple that
No.
was around forever. I mean, it might have been before
Well,
your time, I guess, or after. Actually, maybe it might have been
After, because I left in '69.
Right. What was that like growing up in a little
It,
river town of Locke like that?
It wasn't an easy place to grow up in.
Right.
I think the adults there had a handful to deal with. There was racism, difficulties there. There was the Exclusion Act where there were a lot of men living there, but they couldn't have their wives come over.
Wow.
Or couldn't go back and get married and bring them over.
We could do a whole show just probably on the history of Locke. So,
Yes.
Corliss Lee, I'd like to thank you very much for coming today. And
You're
Douglas
welcome.
Shaw,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Have fun at your celebrations. I may see you down there.
Yep.
That'd be
Please come on
wonderful.
down.
We got to go. So once again, thank you for joining us on LiveWire today. And hopefully Ray will be seeing you next week. It's been a pleasure. Bye.